Welcome into Caldwell County today. I'm Eric Stafford, and I'm sitting here on the stage at the Hub, and we are here to talk about another great theater production, dinner theater, yet again, here at the Hub. And we're going to talk to some of the cast members, and the show is, we already know about it because you talked about auditions a little while back, but what's the show?
This show is To Kill a Mockingbird, the classic show, which was an iconic novel, which became an iconic movie with Gregory Peck, and then 8 years after that became an iconic show, probably one of the 5 most produced shows in the history of American theater. It's a show that for one reason or another I've intended to do for years, but finally got to do it, and we're very privileged because it's on national tour right now. And they don't usually release rights to you, but because it's on the West Coast at the time of our show here, then we do get the rights. And our show is the middle of October, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. 20th, 21st, and 22nd. That's the Thursday through Saturday combination, and it is dinner theater. We'll talk more about all that later.
Okay, well, cool. And I understand we have a couple members of the cast here, and just go ahead and start. You just pass the mic around. We
okay.
were talking about that before, and we'll see. I see Stephen down there, so he looks like he's all the way right there.
Beside me is my good friend and, what'd you say, Stephen, 22 collaborations on stage, Stephen Starnes. And Stephen will start with the worst elements of this show. Not Stephen, but his character. I'll let him tell you about his character, who has no redeemable qualities. So I picked Stephen because if anybody can pull it off, he can find some minimalist quality in him that people will identify with.
Well, I get the opportunity to play the villain in this show, and the villain's first name should be Odious, because the character Bob Ewell is truly odious. He is contemptuous. He is just the worst character that I have ever played. So I hope you'll come see this show, and I hope you will hate the character and not hate me. This person just does dastardly things, and basically it becomes an American tragedy because of this person's actions. And playing this character is not something that I terribly enjoy, but what I do enjoy is the story and the message of To Kill a Mockingbird. I read the book when I was in the 9th grade. That was about 100 years ago, and it was profoundly influential in my life, and it helped shape my worldview. And I saw the Gregory Peck movie on television when I was a young person and just was in awe. I read 2 years ago. I read the biography of the original playwright, not playwright, but the original author, Harper Lee, and learned just so much about how she put her soul and her actual family into the play. By the way, did you know that the character Jim died at the age of 13? The actual brother. Yeah, and so it's based on Truman Capote, and Truman Capote. I could just give you all this wealth of information that when Truman Capote was writing in Cold Blood, actually Harper Lee was his research assistant, and she opened all the doors for him to do all the research. Those of you that have never read In Cold Blood, you don't want to, but you do want to read. You do want to read Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird if you haven't. Now let me just tell you, Keith, I've worked with some great talents. I have worked with some great talents, including you. But this young lady that you have playing Mayella is absolutely phenomenal. Kaylin, is that how you pronounce your name, Kaylin? Yeah. I don't usually learn cast members' names because if I do, I'll use it on stage. But this young lady is playing a character that is abused. And she has the incredible ability. You're only 17, aren't you? Yes. I don't know how she does it. She is able to pull it off, that she conveys to the audience and even to the cast that she is Mayella. So this young lady is phenomenal, Keith. I'm just over there going, I'm gonna watch her. Charge me admission. I'm gonna watch her. Okay.
I'll say one thing and then hand the mic to her. I've had the privilege to work with Kaylin in a few shows. She's very talented. She actually played the young lead role of Scout in the show in Hickory about 4 or 5 years ago, correct? Or about 6 years ago. And now she's graduated to an older young lady, still young, but you can tell us about your part and your involvement here at the Hub and just this show in general, what your impressions are.
Okay. Well, I started working at the Hub when I was 8 years old, and my first show was Fiddler on the Roof, and then I took a few years off, and I came back into Bright Star, and now I'm here again doing To Kill a Mockingbird. And like Keith said, I did play Scout a few years ago, and this story has always been just so so inspirational to me, and I have really connected with this show over the years. And going from playing Scout to playing Mayella is a huge difference, but I always watched my other cast members in the other production, especially the one that was playing Mayella. She did an amazing job, and I always was so focused on her, and I always try to channel my inner my inner person that's similar to her, but I didn't want it to be exactly like her. So I've done a lot of research on the character and how someone would act if they were abused, or some things that are very obvious to other people that they have gone through some trauma. And it's a very traumatizing role, and it's a very hard role to play because you have to get yourself into a really deep spot and allow yourself to go further than you want to. That way you know how far you're allowed to go. And it's just been an amazing opportunity, and I can't wait for everybody to see it.
The show To Kill a Mockingbird speaks of it's a very evil and sinful thing to harm a mockingbird because all they do is sing and make people happy. Well, several of the characters in this show have the characteristics of a mockingbird. They're put upon and they're persecuted for no viable reason. And one of those is the role of Boo Radley, who was played by young Robert Duvall in the movie back in 1962. And here we have a man with whom I've collaborated many times over the years and who's done a lot of lead roles here, but he's willing to come on and do 2 lines at the end of the show as Boo Radley. So it's a very important role, but I'm impressed that Peter was willing to take that on and just come on at the end. So Peter, tell us about your ideas of Boo and about the show and about you and I together some.
Well, we have collaborated quite a bit. I wanted to say I was in the same class as Stephen Starnes, and he was so wrapped up in this book he snubbed the rest of us for the whole year. But no, I'm kidding about that. But no, you and I have collaborated on quite a few things, and they've always been joyful collaborations. You can give me a lot of wonderful opportunities, and I'm very grateful for that. Boo, as you say, is a small but significant role, and looking forward to seeing how he fits into the puzzle at the end of things. As I say, there is significance to it, and so I trust you'll guide me well on it.
Very good.
Now Boo's kind of a presence through the whole thing. That's okay. We can hear, but he's kind of a presence through the whole show.
That's true. Somebody was mentioning the other day. Well, they talk about you through the whole show, and so
yeah.
Plenty of descriptions of him, and then you finally get to see him at the end.
So when you get to meet him, it's really powerful.
Exactly. We hope. Yes.
Dale, whom you'll meet in a few minutes, has a very lively imagination, and he believes that Boo Radley eats dead cats and squirrels.
Oh, wow.
It turns out it's only rabbits right now.
Yeah.
Now we have 2 of our youngest cast members of the triumvirate of young children in the play. And to my left is Maddie Wilson, and to her left is Carson Weinbarger. They play respectively the roles of Scout Finch, Atticus's daughter, and the role of Dill Harris, who is as we talked about, is an inquisitive young man, as is she, a young lady, but he also, throughout the novel, he's always inventing things about pirates and all this sort of thing, but he brings a lot of imagination and a little bit of the comic relief to what can be a fairly heavy show. So I'll let you just go to you one at a time. They're doing a great job, very proud of them. I've never worked with either one before this show, but tell me a little bit about your roles and your interpretation of them and some things you've done, whatever you want to say.
So with this role, Scout, when I first was auditioning for it, I was told, be inquisitive. So, when I started reading over the script and reading the novel, actually, I was thinking, oh, wow, there is a lot of questions that she asked. And if you think about it, while Scout is throughout the play maturing and going through all this, she is not exactly, she is one of the main characters, but she's just there to get the point across. a lot of things that you'll learn from my character in particular is, the whole point of don't judge people. And Dill actually plays a big role in her learning that, because he has all these big ideas about how Boo Radley is such this big scary man, while in the end he ends up being the whole hero. And I'm going to pass this on to you.
So like she was saying, I do have a wide imagination, and that'll really help in the role of Dill, because Dill has a wild imagination. And that really helps the other characters, Jim and Scout, develop their imagination and their learning for, this time period back in 1935. But I also think Dill has some responsibilities in this. He also learned some things along the way too. In the court scene, where the big one, Dill does learn some things, and he does use them along the way.
Very good. Thank both of you. Come see these fine young people here. I have with me now the legal team of Eagles in the town of Macomb, Alabama in 1935. To my left is Randy McCall, who plays Sheriff Heck Tate. And to his left is Kevin Parrish, who plays Judge Taylor, and he always comes in saying, "Here come the judge," every night. These two guys, in addition to being regulars now here at the Hub, are good friends of mine, have been very reliable in singing with me and acting with me. And Randy happens to be my cousin, and we've been glad to reconnect over the last couple of shows here, not only as cast people, but as friends and especially as kin. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I'll let each of them tell you a bit about their characters, then I'll talk a little bit more about Kevin.
Okay. Well, as Keith said, I'm Judge Taylor, and Judge Taylor is a compassionate, fair judge. He tries to run the courtroom for this trial for what could be a very explosive situation. And my theory is kind of that he picks Atticus to represent Tom because, number one, he figures that if anybody can get Tom acquitted, it's Atticus Finch. And number two, if it doesn't result in an acquittal, then it certainly won't be the fault of the representation. So he gets the best that he can to represent him.
I play the part of Heck Tate. I guess it's kind of an Andy Griffin of Macomb. I'm pretty much watching Atticus's back. I'm making sure everything's all right with him and to make sure he's safe, and also knowing everything that's going on, and kind of down on the Bob Ewell, because of who he is and the reputation he has all through the town. And so I'm hopefully going to investigate what goes on and come up with the answer.
Thank you. And again, as I said, these guys also sing, and trying to get this one to come to men's course eventually. Kevin, we're working him into our fall men's course, so I'm delighted about that. Thank you, guys. Okay, now we have Dennis and Brenda Bell. They've been acting in several of the last few shows that we've had here, but I've had the privilege of singing with Brenda, her singing in our group, along with her cousin Marcia, who you'll meet in a few moments. She's an excellent alto. Mr. Cogler, our high school choral teacher, said the other day, and you may not know this, but he said that Marcia and Brenda were two of the best altos he'd ever had in 30 years of singing, so that's good. But they're fine people also. Dennis has also just joined our men's chorus. He's very talented, multi-talented, and is a good bass singer. But they're both, the thing that impresses me the most is their great attitude and their willingness to help with everything. And Brenda is a townsperson, and so is Dennis, but Dennis also is Boo Radley's older brother, Nathan, in the play. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about their perspective of where they're coming from in this play.
Okay, well, for me, being a townsperson, I don't even have a name in the program, but we're seen a lot in the courtroom, and I think the first nights that we even started to practice that it could bring a tear to your eye. It's very intense, and it's hard not to show, because we sometimes are not supposed to be who we really are at the very beginning of the trial, but it's a very intense situation, and we have such a wonderful cast that they bring it to life, and and I'll put a little plug in for the group, and if anyone is interested in doing some acting or being helpful, this is a wonderful, wonderful group to work with. I mean, you cannot find better friends and helpers. It's amazing how well everyone works together and cares for one another. So.
Very good.
Okay, well, my part in the play is to play Nathan Radley, which is Boo's older brother, who comes to town and takes care of Boo later. And just have a couple lines in it. And like Brenda said, the cast here is just wonderful, and we thank Keith for his wonderful direction that he's given us. And so we are really pleased to help in the play. I had read the book several years ago and seen the movie, and so we're kind of familiar with some things, but being in the play sure makes a big difference on your perspective of what's happening at the times.
Very good. And Brenda made a very valid point about watching and getting involved and growing. Every character in any play ideally should have an arc. A play is a living entity, a vibrating, breathing entity, and you need to see these people go from point A to point B, even if they're in the background, and our cast does that wonderfully, I think, and we'll continue to develop that. So thank you, guys. My mantra is I'm smart enough to surround myself with good people, and you won't find finer people than these two. We've worked together for years. Marcia and I go back to singing in high school chorus together with Mr. Cogdell. I later met her husband, Robert, but they're always available to help me with musical endeavors and plays, and have such a great attitude and work ethic and work hard, so I'm very appreciative of them. Let Robert tell you about his character of Walter Cunningham in the play, and Marcia as her cousin Brenda as a townsperson, but and everyone here is invaluable to the play. So, Robert.
As Keith said, my character is Walter Cunningham, and Walter is a farmer. He's like a lot of people in 1935 America. He's poor and probably not well educated, and by our standards, he's prejudiced. But I admire the character Walter because he comes around, he starts to think for himself, and he listens to what's going on in the courtroom scene, and he thinks some of this line I've been fed all my life just isn't right, and I admire the character for that.
And as Keith had said earlier, I am one of the townspeople. I don't have any lines to say, but I do enjoy being part of the courtroom scene, and it's very interesting. And I admire Charlie, who's playing Atticus Finch. I've always liked that part in the movie and in the book. Keith and I read the book at the same time when we were juniors in high school English class. So it's kind of fun to be in this endeavor together with him.
Yes, and Robert talked about his character probably being pretty common and not well educated. Exactly the opposite of Robert, very erudite and sophisticated, so we're glad to have him on board.
Now, wait a minute. Now, the last time we saw Marcia, she was schooling y'all in how to bowl. Robert is my bocce teammate, and Marcia's going to scorekeep our tournament, which the first in Hudson, which will probably be over by the time this show airs, but Eric did a segment with us, and fortunately all of us had some pretty good roles on TV. We didn't make fools of ourselves, so yeah, she did. Yeah, she did really good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we have two ladies who have become friends of mine, and we're doing shows together. Ann, on my immediate left, Aaron Wepner, and I go back to Newton when I directed music at a church in which she was involved back in the 80s, or late 80s, early 90s. And hadn't seen her much for a few years, but we were blessed enough to have her come and audition for a show here and a couple of shows ago, and now she's become a regular and part of our community and feels very much like family. Bethany and I have worked together for a few years, and she's just always so reliable. She's worked on stage and also as a stage manager here. I can always depend on her. She's always pleasant, always delightful, very talented. So they're both a blessing to our theater community here in Hudson. Now, in this show, Bethany is stage managing, and Ann is being anti-type because she's really a nice lady. But in this show, she's the town gossip and doesn't have a good word to say about anybody. So we'll let you talk about your involvement.
Well, in Mockingbird, I play Miss Stephanie Crawford, who they refer to as a neighborhood scold. So I don't think that she's somebody maybe on the top of the popularity charts. But I really see this character as somebody who, in a deep way, really cares about her town and what's going on. You know, unfortunately, it probably doesn't come across very well to a lot of people, but she's really deeply involved in this community. And I expect, she can't really say it too well, but I expect she really loves people in her own way. And so I think that this play is so much about transformation. I think that when the book hit, what was it, in the 1960? 1960. You know, I think it was so well received because it was about something that was coming to consciousness for people, and the struggle and the change. I know in the 60s I was in elementary school and experienced the first student in the desegregation movement in our community, who I recently connected with, which is kind of an interesting little side story. But people were part of that time and part of that culture in 1935, and I think Stephanie slowly transforms a little bit, but you'll have to watch very carefully because it's really subtle.
All right, I am honored to be stage managing this, classic and beloved play, and feel very privileged to work with such a talented cast and crew. I'm enjoying being at rehearsal each night, just watching the play, grow and change and transform, and following in the script, helping the actors with their lines, and then I'm getting ready to start gathering props for the show, which I'm really looking forward to, and just making sure that they're of the time period of the 1930s, that they'll have that old look, and we're going to try to convey the weather in this play being very hot through props and through items that the actors and actresses will have. So I'm looking forward to that, and I just hope that the audience will walk away with having just felt some very powerful feelings and emotions about life and family and community. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Hang on one second. We do like to hope and idealize that theater does not only entertain, but that it makes people think and feel, and that's what we try to do with shows, especially this one. Ann's character, Stephanie, reminds me of a joke about a barber in Tennessee who never has anything nice to say about anybody. He has this really nice customer who's the most upbeat guy in the world, and he comes in, and the barber always puts down anything he says. This guy's a Catholic, and he's getting ready to go to Italy. So the barber says, "Where are you going for your vacation?" He says, "I'm going to Italy." He says, "Well, you're a Catholic. I suppose you'll go to the Vatican." He says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, what do you want to go there for? It's hot and crowded and nasty and expensive." And the guy says, "No, I think it's pretty reasonable, the package deal we've gotten, and I hope to get to meet the Pope." He says, "Oh, you won't meet the Pope. He won't give you the time of day." And so just puts everything down. Guy goes on vacation, comes back for his next haircut. And the barber knows that the guy's truthful. He says, "Well, how was your vacation?" He says, "Nothing at all like you told me." He said, "It was lovely. The people were lovely. The weather was very temperate and moderate. And I got to go to the Vatican." He said, "Well, it was crowded. You didn't get to see the Pope." He said, "No, he came out on the porch for an audience." So the barber perked up a little bit, and he said, "Well, what?" He says, "Well, the Pope called me up on the platform with him." By this time, the barber said, "Oh, really?" He said, "What did he say to you?" He says, "Where did you get that horrible haircut?" So he got him in the end. Thanks, ladies. Okay, now we have with us Cindy Dale and Jim Engelman. Cindy is a newcomer to the Hub as an actress, but she came and sang with me back in the spring and did Welcome to Mitford, and I'm very delighted that she's decided to continue with her artistic activities here. Jim is my buddy from a while back. He's also my boss as a commissioner of the town of Hudson, and the only thing, Jim is just so introverted. We're trying to work to bring out his character some. But he plays the attorney, Mr. Gilmer, Horace Gilmer, in this show, and I'll let both of them tell you about their involvement in the show.
I'm a court stenographer, so I do a lot of writing during the court scene, and I'm also a townsperson, so I don't have a speaking part, but I have to react and do things like that with things that happen in the court. Making it short and sweet for you.
Brevity is king. So the
You've heard of brevity, haven't
you? Yeah,
you?
brevity is.
You know what I love about Eric? He's got this little beautiful thing where you can cut and paste. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go ahead and cut you till now.
Well, Keith, it's an honor actually to be on the stage again with you. I've been here a lot. I love this town. I love this stage, and I love performing. It's really been a pleasure. Usually I do comedy, and so this is a challenge, right? To play a district attorney, which I am not. So it's been a challenge for stepping out of the box, and it's always great being on stage with you and you know, enjoying chicken.
Chicken? That's all we have. We'll have some chicken.
Now, I want to ask him something.
Oh, okay. Yes, Eric. How can I help you, sir?
I understand your last performance was very wooden. Yeah, you played a tree in The Wizard of Oz.
So yes, yes. So I played a tree in The Wizard of Oz. It was a very challenging role. It was standing still for an entire scene was a challenge, and then I didn't have any lines, so that was even worse.
It's just a misunderstanding. They told him to leave, so he tried to leave like a tree.
Yes, yes. And the tree outfit was not very slimming either. It was it was not. The trunk was big. Yes.
Cindy made a very valid point. She said although she had no lines, she had to react. And shows are made by people reacting. Acting is listening and reacting. What I try to tell kids when I start with them, don't just say your lines and tune out for 2 pages so you're on again. You're involved every moment. You're living in the moment. And if people bring it to life through that, then it does come to life. So, okay, thank you guys. Now we have 2 more ladies from this large but special cast that we have here for To Kill a Mockingbird. On my immediate left is Cynthia Haas, with whom I've worked in theater for 35, 40 years. Since the late 70s, yeah, or early 80s. And Cynthia has been not only a very reliable and talented lady, but has become a very good and trusted friend over the years, and she knows that I feel that way and that I appreciate what she does. And we'll talk about her character in a moment, Miss Maudie Atkinson. To her left is Ann Hicks, who has also become a very good friend and reliable, helpful, very talented person. But she's only been involved with the Hub for a couple of years, but we're so glad to have her. She plays a townsperson in the show. And Cynthia plays the character of Miss Maudie Atkinson, and I'll let you both of them tell you about their involvement.
Okay, thank you. Before I begin, though, I would like to say that thank you very much for letting me have the opportunity to do this show. Years ago at Foothills, my dad was in the show, Bob Haas, and he was the judge, and Judge Taylor. And several years after that, my brother was in the show in Foothills, and he played the sheriff. So now I get the opportunity to be in the show and play Miss Maudie Atkinson. Miss Maudie is a really dear friend of Atticus. They're of the same generation, and I would say Miss Maudie is one of Atticus's strongest supporters. She has a very compassionate character. She understands the time period. She understands the community. She understands the neighborhood that they're in, which, as she says, has been there longer than the town. And also, too, she has a lot of wisdom. She's very understanding of what goes on in the town, what other people are doing, and so forth. But she is understanding of the differences, and yet is very supportive of the things that are different, I think. So it's just an honor and privilege to play that character.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of this. I was a school teacher before this part of my life of retirement, and taught that book several times. And I'm just excited because it's such a good book, and it just shows life so well in that time. And there's just so much we still need to work on. And I think that this brings that to light to people who come, and they'll go home and think about it. And I think it could change lives.
And one thing about the time period and so forth, it's like Miss Maudie says, it's that the town has taken a baby step, but it's a step, and it's a step in the right direction.
And I've written a play during COVID about COVID, in which I have a black gentleman, the character, who talks about baby steps, and you got to start somewhere, so you have to take baby steps, and taking one step this way is better than going backwards or remaining the same. So thank you. Now we have Luke Peruch, right? Always, Mom told me his last name rhymes with Pooch, so I have to remember that. Luke Peruch, P-A-R-U-C-H. And to his left is Mike Haney, with whom I went to school 463 years ago. And I was really glad to reacquaint with Mike. I've seen him a few times over the years, but his grandson, Carson, whom you met earlier, is in the play. And Mike has come and helped backstage, and we needed more men, so he's graciously agreed to come on stage. And I think he's just started, but I think he's having a good time with it, or will. But I'm very grateful to have him involved. I'll start here with Luke. This is about the third or fourth endeavor on which Luke and I have worked together. He's played the role of, what's the role in Welcome to Mitford? What's your young Dooley? He's been young Dooley in both of our productions of Welcome to Mitford, and he also was young Jesus in a myriad of other roles in Cotton Patch Gospel, and he did a special appearance in our Home for Christmas concert this year and did a great job. But Luke's impressed me since I've met him as being not only a fine actor and very talented, but a fine young man, and takes direction well and has a great attitude and is obviously very intelligent. So we'll let you tell us about Jim. He's playing Jim Finch, and Scout's brother and Atticus's son, and it's a big role. Tell us about Jim.
Yep. Well, Jim is kind of the older sibling, so he's always like the one who's more cautious about things and always thinking about that. He's a very curious and cautious kid, and he really enjoys playing and things like that, like a normal kid would. And he's always trying to get his dad to doing these things. But as his dad's a lawyer, he's not much into that kind of thing. He's into things like reading books and stuff, which I am also into in real life, which a lot of people don't honestly enjoy those things that much. So he's always trying to get his dad in things, but he's never wanting to. And he's always just been like the protective one. He's always trying to take care of Dill and Scout, kind of like that. So yep. And yeah, he's a pretty awesome role to play. I love playing him. I think he's gonna be good. It's really good to watch. Although as Jim, I'm not too much into the court scene, but it's really good to watch the court scene as Jim, and it is really interesting to watch and see how it unfolds in the play. I think you guys will really like it. So yep, that's about all there is to Jim for now. I'll go and pass it to him.
Well, like Keith said, my grandson is in this. I came to support him, and next thing I know, I'm up here helping out. I don't mind helping out when I can. I'm new at this. I was in church plays years ago, and done what I could to help. But I play one part as a farmer, part of the mob. You know, when you're in a situation like that, you want to go with the flow. You don't want to be different. You want to get in there with the mob. And the next part is Link D's, where he stands up for Tom Robinson. And you know, as a Christian, I try to stand up for what's right. And the time period back then is not a lot different than today. There's a lot of injustice, and the way the war in Ukraine is an example. People do what they think is right, regardless of the consequences, and that's basically what this show is all about.
That's good, Mike. Cuts to the chase. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have both of you here. Privilege. Now we have my newfound friend of the last couple of years, Kim Jordan, who's an educator from Catawba County, and we were privileged to have her up here to do Bright Star with us right before COVID, and now she's back playing the narrator, who is Jean Louise Finch, Scout grown up. And I love having the opportunity to work with Kim. I'll let her tell you about her part, which is challenging because she's a narrator and she doesn't get to interrelate as much with the characters back and forth. She has all these long paragraphs of dialogue, so that's very challenging, but she's going to be great with it.
Thank you, Keith. I just want to say that it's been a great opportunity to come back to the Hub. I really enjoyed being a part of Bright Star. There are so many talented actors and actresses who are a part of this theater, and we couldn't do it without each and every one of them. I'm just very delighted to play the role of Jean Louise Finch, the grown-up scout. It's a unique role in that, as Keith said, I'm not really interacting with the other actors and actresses on the stage. I'm serving as a narrator. I've often seen this show done where the narrator is a voiceover only. And so I have the unique opportunity to be a part of the show, but I'm sort of separate from the show. It's as if it were all through my mind's eye that I'm telling the story and recounting the events that happened in Macomb, Alabama in 1935. So it's a really challenging role, but I'm really proud to be a part of it and be able to tell the story.
Thank you very much. Next we have two new characters to Hudson. The lady to my left, Tiffany Christian, I met because another cast member, Kaylin, who you've already met, suggested that I contact her, and I'm so delighted that I did. My biggest question is, or query, why, you've done so much theater in this area, and so have I. We'd never crossed paths before, but I'm glad we finally, was that what it was? You'd heard about me. But I'm so glad that our paths do cross. And they come down from Boone every night, and beside her is her son, Ray. And we were looking for the character of Tom Robinson, and I had like 4 gentlemen had acted with me before, and they were all very talented actors, but everyone had a very legitimate reason why they couldn't do it. So Tiffany said, well, I could bring my son Ray. And I thought, well, good, maybe it'll work. He's only 16 now. His character is 25, but you will see in a moment he talks and looks and carries himself like he's 25. But I thought, well, I'll listen, and maybe he'll be okay. He's great. I wouldn't pick any of those other guys over him. He's a great kid. He's not a kid, but you're a great young man, and you can just tell he's a fine quality, but he really brings his character to life, and that deep bass resonates with the pain of the character. And in the show, Tom has to have a limp left arm, and Ray walks in the door every night, and immediately he's just right here ready to go, so that's wonderful. I'll let them tell you about their involvement in the show and about coming to the Hub and your first impressions. I'll start with you, Tiffany. Ladies first.
First, I was just absolutely honored that I would be thought of and that Kaylin would say, hey, you need to call Tiffany. And how could you pass up on an opportunity to do To Kill a Mockingbird? So Calpurnia is an interesting character. I think for me, the curiosity and the excitement is the part of her story that you don't see. She is Atticus Finch's family's maid and housekeeper and cook and all those things, since Atticus' wife is not there. So she kind of takes care of the kids and runs after them. A stereotypical kind of black mammy character, but not in the negative stereotypes kind of way. But I'm just curious about all the parts of her that you don't see, and that's what's so much fun about her role.
I came here with my mom, and it's like I usually get roles because my mom has suggested them to me. But To Kill a Mockingbird is different for me specifically because like I read it back in middle school, and back then I didn't really like realize like the nuances of it, and now being able to be in it, it sheds a new light on like what it is and what it means. And the character of Tom Robinson is like a very how I see him is like a very kind soul just thrust into the worst of situations. I think that's a very important character to show in, especially now. And I think that I can do something really special with this.
Thank you so much, both of you. So glad to have you here. Now we have two people who have never been involved with theater before in their life. Cut, that was just a joke. Now we're really going to start. Okay. Now I have to my left the grand dame of Hub Hudson Dinner Theater, Miss Carolyn Eichert, and to her left is my recent new acquaintance and has become a very good friend and is a pleasure to work with, and that is Mr. Charlie Finkel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about both of them, and then they can talk about themselves and their characters. Carolyn has been involved with our shows here at the Hub from the beginning, but we go back in theater before that. She's involved in every capacity. She's a fine actress with a great presence, but she also designs all of her sets and is very talented in a multifaceted way and cares about our theater program and is a major part of this family, and it is a family. And I'll let her tell you about her part. She says, I always cast her as old, mean Southern women. Well, this time I do. None of those are true in real life. It's acting. It's a character. She can tell you about her part and about the set. And Charlie came here for the first Welcome to Mitford show. We did it twice, a year and a half ago. It seems like longer, so much has happened. But just brought down the house as Uncle Billy. Very fine characterization. And then he played God and the Devil in our version of, or an angel and the devil in our version of Cotton Patch Gospel. Just has a delightful stage presence. He's heard this many times, but some of you haven't. Charlie majored in theater at the University of Miami, went out west, was looking at an acting career, was a pilot, had a pretty horrendous crash. He decided that if he was going to feed his family, and that's the old joke, what's the difference between, he's starving. What's the difference between a large pizza and an actor? A large pizza can feed a family of 4. So Charlie became a trial lawyer, and a very successful trial lawyer in Northern California. As he retired after many years, he decided to move back to the East Coast. He liked the climate here in more ways than one. Came to Taylorsville, and we've been fortunate and blessed enough to have him involved in our theater. He's an avid bike rider and does a lot of things. I'm going to let them both tell you about their roles in the show and just about the Hub or acting in general.
Thank you, Keith. It is a pleasure to always be involved here in theater at the Hub. I guess it's one of my passions. Keith said I always play old Southern women. Now, I've played some despicable characters, especially when I killed 12 men in arsenic and old lace and was convinced it was for their good. So this
Actually,
time,
it was 13.
Oh, I did get the third. That's right. Anyway, this time I am playing the most unloved character of all. My name is Ms. DeBose. I am a mean old lady who loves to pick on children, which really kind of hurts my heart because I've been a teacher all my life. And I hope my former students wouldn't say that about me. But this show has special meaning for so many reasons. When Keith told me that he was casting Charlie as Atticus, I thought, this is an absolute blessing. He is perfect for the role, and you will see that in his performance. Like many others, I read the book years ago and have had the pleasure of rereading it again. And the lesson that sticks with me from it all is that we are all children of God. We are made in his image, and we are to be worshipers of him, and he loves each of us. It doesn't matter. Language, nationality, ethnicity, color of skin. We're all just people trying to make our way through life the very best we can and help others along the way. Atticus and those who follow him share this message unequivocally with the audience. And I hope it's one that we will all take as we love one another.
Wow. Well, thank you and good night. Well, I just say a few things here. First of all, Keith, I never thought in my life I would be playing Atticus Finch. And by giving me this part, what you have done is you have brought together in the culmination years of my, well, in the last half, I'll say, of my life, two great loves of mine. I started out in theater, started out acting, and that was the intention, but somehow I got switched over into being a lawyer, and I did trial law for 40 years. And I always said when I was a lawyer and I thought about retiring, I said, well, one day I'm going to get back and do community theater. And sure enough, by the strange workings of fate, I started doing plays before I left California again, and then came out here, and I heard by mere coincidence that they were looking for characters for Welcome to Midford, and I went out and auditioned and got Uncle Billy part, which I just love doing, and now here I am playing Atticus Finch, which it's about as far away from my real being as anything can be, because Atticus Finch is someone you try to emulate in life, and I only wish I could be as civilized and pure and honest as Atticus is. But you know, a lot of people think that when they hear To Kill a Mockingbird, they think Atticus Finch, well, wow, you got the best part and everything. Well, that's not true. And I'll tell you what, Atticus Finch is just kind of a center point, but the real gist and heart of this play comes from the characters. And all of the characters in this play, the actors playing them, are really, really good. I particularly like the trial scene, of course, and when I start doing the examination of Bob Ewell and Mayella Ewell, I feel like I'm back in court again. I'll tell you, you know, when you're an actor and you know things are going really well, you come off stage with a real high. And the same thing is true about trial law and cross-examinations. If you do a really good job when you're trying a case, you get that same feeling. And here I get that same feeling being an actor, being a trial lawyer. And I'll tell you, it's great. I love the characters here, and I love working with Keith. I love everybody who I've worked with out here in Hudson. It is the nicest group of people that you can imagine. So Keith, thank you for keeping me involved here.
Thank you, Charlie.
May I say one more?
You sure may, and I'll lead you into this because I was going to mention in the touring Broadway show now, that's touring nationally, the lady who plays Miss DuBose was the original scout in the 1962 movie. So she's come full circle. So maybe, Kaylin, you can be scout, and Mayella, and 40 years from now, you can be Miss DuBose. Okay, Karen.
Does that mean I get to go back and be a scout? Can I go backwards? I just want to say a word about the set. It has been our pleasure to have the privilege. My husband, Joe, is the lead carpenter and manipulator of materials to get it done. Each show has a special place in my heart. But more than anything, it would not happen without the tremendous cadre of volunteers who come in, hammer, bring their electric screwdrivers, paint. It's just amazing. And if you want to be involved in theater, but you don't want to be on the stage, there's always a place for you. These folks give of their time and talents willingly, and it's hard work, but it brings joy when we put it on the stage and see the performance. So I invite you to come, share, make them with us.
Amen. Before I give you the logistics to wrap up, you can see what special people we have here at the Hub, and as I've said earlier and say many times, my mantra is I'm smart enough to surround myself with good people, and we have a lot of good people here, both quality of people and talent, so that's wonderful. This is not a dark show, but it's a very serious show, It deals a little bit with mental illness. It deals a little bit with seclusion. It deals a little bit with abuse, and it deals a lot with prejudice and miscarriage of justice. And those elements are dark, but there is hope in that, as Cynthia's character said, Miss Maudie, that there are baby steps, and we hope that this will enlighten people to think about those and to take them. We do have the N word in this show, and it's reprehensible to me all of the time, but especially given the quality of the African Americans we have involved in this show. But we thought long and hard about it, and it would be doing a disservice not to show that ugliness and bring it to light. And Stephen Starnes, who you met earlier, who has to use that language, is so opposed to that. He does not want to do it. So he is acting. The closest thing I can think of is when we did Sound of Music. Franz Boersma, in real life Franz, F-R-A-N-S, played Franz, F-A-R-N-Z, the butler of the von Trapp family, who is secretly working with the Nazis. And at some point he comes out with this Nazi flag. The day before we opened that show, and Dan Truitt, as most of you know, we talked about, was in the movie. He played, as Roth, he played Captain von Trapp, and had a lot of people. We had to turn away 700 people from seeing that show. A lot of it was his name, but then people realized everybody else. But Franz is up here. It's the night before we open, and Franz starts crying and has to walk off the stage. And he apologized profusely, and I said, no need to. When he was a 5-year-old in the Netherlands, the Nazis came goose-stepping into his town. And here he is playing one of them. And he said something that really sticks with me, and it's my philosophy as well. To really show the atrocity, he was willing to play it and to suffer to show that atrocity, because that can be educating to people and make their feelings possibly shift. And that's what we're trying to do in this show. And so everybody here has a great attitude in real life. Everybody here is a very loving family. We're going to try to bring you some drama. And that drama will take place on October 13th, 14th, and 15th. 20th, 21st, and 22nd of October. That's a Thursday through Saturday run for 2 weeks. You can get tickets in one of 3 ways. You can call here to the Hub box office, 828-726-8871, or you can come by in person, or you can go online to the Hub Station website or the Town of Hudson website and link to Tix.com. That's Tix.com. If you see the show and do dinner, and dinner will be catered by Boxcar Grill. It will be grilled chicken with mushrooms and red potatoes and green beans and rolls and tea and banana pudding. And if you want to do the show and the dinner starts at 6:30. Tickets are $37. If you want to sit in the balcony, which are fine seats, and see the show only, it's $19. But please call and make reservations. Every show we do here is special enough that everybody needs to see it, but this one needs to sell out. It will be a travesty if it doesn't.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much, and thank you for interviewing the cast and showing us the cast. And we can't wait for the show. It's a great show. You're going to have a great time. Come out and see it.